Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Soul Surgery Podcast. My name is Nikki Clinch, and I am your host. I have had a pause from the podcast for the last few weeks. There has been so much going on here in New Zealand, so much unfolding. It has been both shocking and jolting to my personal self and my personal life. And I just needed to take a little bit of time to step back and process so that I could come back and speak to you and share with you all from a place of consciousness, from a place of groundedness, so from a place of peace, um, how to stay centered at the center of a cyclone. And that is exactly what I'm going to be talking to you about in this episode. This is a solo episode. I want to share with you, how do we stay centered? How do we stay connected and rooted in our truth when there is a storm, a cyclone circling around us? This is in relation to your own internal storm, emotional, mental triggers, activations, and also in relation to what is unfolding in our world right now. So there's a 3D aspect to it, and then there is an internal aspect to it. And they're not distinct. In fact, they're the same, two sides of the same coin. So that is what this week's episode is about. I hope that you find it useful. I hope it serves you well. If there's anything in this episode that allows you to have a moment of insight, a shift, an opening of a blind spot, a dissolving of something that you couldn't have seen before, please do share it with me. I love to hear about your maturation. I love to hear about your healing. You can DM me on Instagram. You can email me through the website. You can write in the comments underneath the YouTube video. I love to hear from you. And if this episode serves you, please do leave us a review, because your reviews really matter. They help this content spread further and wider. Share this episode with a friend, with parents, with family, anyone who may need to hear this right now. If you are human, then what I speak about in this episode is in relation to you. So I hope that you find it useful. If you love the podcast, subscribe to our channel. Welcome to the community. That's enough for me for the introduction. Let's go straight into the episode. Thank you for listening, and welcome to the Soul Surgery Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode. Thank you for your patience as I took a few weeks off from the podcast. And I'm going to share deeper in this episode why that happened, why I needed to do that. I don't, you may already know, you probably do know, there's a lot unfolding here in New Zealand. In fact, an enormous amount unfolding here in New Zealand, and it has both been expected, and once it actually has begun happening, it has been immensely shocking to the system, shocking to my brain, shocking as it jolts perceptions of reality. My perception of reality, a lot of people I know's perception of reality. We have been in lockdown now for 10 weeks, and in the last couple of weeks, the intensity of control and measures being implemented into society here in New Zealand have been extreme levels of control. I am not going to use this episode to speak about political matters because, well, two reasons. One, it doesn't serve you as a human being for me to promote choosing sides. It also doesn't serve what I want to teach about, because then we just get caught up in the details of the story. And that in itself can be a real distraction. But I also am not going to pretend that there isn't huge levels of intensity and control being implemented right now. There are. That is just fact. Um, what I really want to share about is how it impacted me and has impacted me, and the process that I had to go through in order to be responsible for it. Why? Because if you are human, this will relate to you. How do we not only find our center, but stay centered at the center of a cyclone? How do we stay connected to our truth, to our roots, when there is a storm blowing, wildly blowing, and someone is turning the volume up on the wind? This is not only a fundamental practice to learn for your life, but it is needed now with where we are on the planet. Why? Because when we can stay centered and connected to our truth at the center of a cyclone, we do not lose ourselves. We are not controllable. We stay in our power. And when we stay in our power, we have the ability to make conscious choices, important conscious choices, choices coming from a place of consciousness rather than a hijacking of fear and terror and compulsive reactions. When we can stay rooted at the center of the cyclone, we can continue to listen. And I mean, really listening. Listening is only listening if we don't always already know what is coming next. It's not the same as hearing noise in your mind. It's not the same as projecting what you already know or think you know, because everything you know in your mind is programmed from the past. Listening is being in an active, participating state with the present moment. An active participation of engaging in the present moment, listening to the present from the present so that we can hear what needs to unfold next. We can hear the next step. We can hear what is truthful for ourselves. We can gain more consciousness and awareness, and nothing can control consciousness. And so staying rooted at the center of a cyclone is a fundamental tool for human being to learn so that we don't go back into survival strategies and reactive states. So I'm going to share a little bit about my story just because it's so it's so helpful to hear human story as a form of learning and identification. And I hope that you hear yourself in this. Um, about a week ago, or maybe it was a bit longer, we heard things just started shifting here. You know, we moved here to experience and live in a state of in a certain state of freedom. Um, the land here is phenomenal. It's wild and alive. The spirit here is free and pretty chilled. Um, and then a few weeks ago, it was shocking to experience a turn in the narrative by the government here and intense levels of force and pushing and control started being fed through every source of media outlet that you can imagine. Just in the papers, all there was one narrative, just pummeling people's brains, constantly repeating the same thing over and over and over and over again, which I will not talk about here. But it was like a barrage of force. You will believe what we want you to believe. You will hear, you will absorb it, you will take it in. It'll just coming at you from every angle and feeding and cultivating intense levels of fear. I know that if you have been in any other country, if you're listening from the UK, you saw this happen too. Maybe you were, or maybe you were not conscious of it, but it certainly did. If you were in the US, you saw this happen too. This is not new. This is a strategy that, but a very effective strategy, because it creates intense levels of fear in the receiver. And so when these announcements started kicking in here, there was about 3 or 4 days when huge levels of fear was surging through my body. And I have done a lot of work on myself. I have done many, many plant medicine ceremonies. I have worked with all different kinds of psychedelics. I have been in therapy for 22 years. I have trained intensively with my maturation mentor for the last 5 years. I've been in every program you can think of. Um, and so I count myself to be someone that trusts myself and can handle and live through some pretty extraordinarily challenging experiences. If you've read my book, you'll hear how I speak about it in the book. Surrender through enormous points of change and transformation. So I've had many dark nights of the soul, and I've come out the other end. In fact, I've birthed out the other end. But this gripped me. I had about I ha- it felt like a lifetime, but it was about 3 or 4 days when I had intense fear surging through me 24 hours a day. Now, and it was extremely uncomfortable. I The one gift was that I was able to stay conscious. And what I mean by that is that the fear was moving through me, but I didn't fully get lost in it. I didn't fully get taken over, that I collapsed in it. I was able to somehow stay conscious, meaning that there was a part of me that was able to observe and witness the intensity of the fear that was moving through. And then, of course, what it was triggering from my own past trauma in childhood, um, how old I was that was being activated, my young self, old traumas, old fears, old pain of being outcast, scapegoated, bullied, um, being in the hands of sinister, angry parents. My parents are not sinister. They're amazing beings. But as a child, I experienced some moments as real sinister, scary cruelty. And it it had activated the whole thing. It was like my whole system was just like absolutely vibrating with terror. So what the hell do you do? What do you do? Because I know that I am not the only one on this planet that has had days, if not weeks, if not months like that, which is why I'm on here sharing about it. So the first step was consciousness. Am I able to stay conscious to the fear that is moving through me? Am I able to stay conscious that fear is moving through me, surging through me? That's step one. And for some, that is hard. That's hard because we don't get educated to be conscious of fear as an experience that is moving through you. We just become fear. We get hijacked and it blinds us and we can't see it, and before we know it, we're like stuffing our faces with brownies or drinking a bottle of wine or acting out in some way or obsessing on social media. Before we know it, we're acting out in behavioral in behaviors that we're so familiar with, but actually the behavior itself is the symptom of the fear that is surging through you. So, step one, consciousness over fear that is surging through me right now. Second step, step two, consciousness that the fear that is surging through me is real, but it has activated something from my past. I am actually not going to die today. But the experience moving through my body is telling me that I am. Why? Because that's how I experienced it as a little girl. As children, when we experience trauma or threat or wound, we think we're not going to make it. If a parent abandons a child, the child doesn't experience abandonment, they experience a threat to their life. Why? Because if a parent abandons the child doesn't make it. We experience it like it is life or death without the mind or the language to be able to articulate it. So step 2, can you have consciousness over what from your past has been activated? Now, these 2 steps are not easy. In fact, they are hard. They require full responsibility, self responsibility. They require you to lean into the experience rather than stuffing your face with brownies. I'm using that as an example because that's what I used to do. Drinking a bottle of wine, getting high, having sex, all the stuff that I have done. And I'm sure you relate to at least some of it. Leaning in and choosing to bring consciousness, awareness. It's like shining a spotlight on the human experience that is moving through in the present and looking at it rather than turning away, which feels counterintuitive because our human nature, the human mind programs us to survive. And so instinctively, the first thing is to pull away so that you can survive this threat that is occurring or the perceived threat. And so instead, can you lean in? Whew. Feels like jumping off a cliff. But it is an act of love to lean in. It is an act of surrender to lean in. It's my book, Surrender. If you haven't read it, surrendering the resistance, surrendering the fight, surrendering the running away and leaning in to what is so that you can shine a spotlight on it and bring consciousness to it. Consciousness that it is even there, and consciousness that it has activated something from your past. If you haven't listened to my episode on blind spots and also navigating yourself through a trigger, please go and listen to them. They'll really help you in relation to this conversation. So I'm then being with this fear, like, and it feels like it's never going away and it's lasting a lifetime. Like when you lean in and you're willing to be with the experience, you bloody hope that it's going to be over in like 5 minutes, but it's not. And then you hope that it'll be over like in an hour, but it doesn't. Well, for me, it took like 3 or 4 days. And I didn't even know when it was going to be over, but I trusted that it would. You see, when you can be with the fear, it's important that you know when you are actually in the experience, when you're actually not in resistance and pulling away and running away and escaping, when you are leaning in and being with it, you can be guaranteed it will pass. It's not, it may pass, it will pass, but you don't know when. So you have to be patient and you have to surrender. Surrender your ideas of when it should, surrender your expectations, and really be with it. So it took me 3 or 4 days of really being with it. And what I did is I would drop into meditation and I would literally sit in meditation, experiencing this like white river rafting, surging of terror moving through my being, my body, with consciousness that it is the experience moving through my body, with consciousness that it is from the past. It has activated something from the past. And in my meditation, I chose to sit right in the center of it. And I closed my eyes and I just focused on my breath. And instead of pulling away, I consciously, with awareness, I leaned right in, as if I was actively choosing to sit at the center of the tornado, of the cyclone. And as I was sitting in the center of the cyclone, without running away, without pulling away, without escaping, without resistance, and I would just breathe, and I would be conscious of the thoughts that were running through my mind. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm not safe. Everything's going to fall apart. Now, I know those thoughts. I know those thoughts because they're so familiar. Those thoughts are from the past. They're so old. My God, it's like an old record that plays over and over again. Even though the experience that is happening in life is real, it is scary. These thoughts are old. So I'm sitting at the center and I'm breathing. And this fear is surging through my body, and I'm conscious of these thoughts that are crossing my mind, just mechanically crossing. You're not safe. You're going to die. Everything's going to fall apart. You're going to run out of all your money and you're going to lose your house. Pretty much exactly what I thought as a little girl. I found myself dropping into this incredible depth of stillness. It was so profound. It was like everything just around me just went quiet. Everything around me went still, like the deepest stillness that you can imagine. And I was sitting there just breathing, dropping deeper into this stillness without trying to change the thoughts of my mind, without trying to change the fear or experience that was moving through me. I wasn't in any way in any kind of judgment of it. I wasn't in any way in any kind of resistance of it. I just sat in the center of it all, letting it move through. And I heard these words. I have fear moving through me, but I am not afraid. I have fear moving through me, but I am not afraid. It was so clear that the I am that I am was the one that is sitting in the center, rooted, breathing, not trying to change the experience, not trying to run from it, not trying to control it, fix it, surrendering all the control, surrendering all the resistance. The I am that sat at the center, that sits at the center, while this cyclone of human experience is swirling around me, thoughts, thoughting your mind. I realized that I have fear, but I am not afraid. And it was such a profound moment because it was like crystal clear that the I of my I am not afraid. I do still have fear move through me, but I am ready. And I believe that this is universal. I believe that at the center of the cyclone, each one of you has that level of power and presence. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can stop the cyclone. And I think we live in a world that is obsessed with trying to stop the cyclone rather than educating and teaching us how to sit at the center of it, completely unattached, non identified with it. And so, if you too have had a cyclone moving through, maybe it is about what's happening in the world, or maybe what's happening in your life. Maybe you're losing your home, you're losing your job, maybe you've lost a partner, maybe you've lost a friend, maybe maybe nothing's happening, you're just being triggered as hell. Then this relates to you because it's the same system. So, can you, step one, and this process is all in my book, Surrender. It's in multiple chapters of this book. I walk you through an actual process of learning how to be with, how to hold yourself, how to bring awareness, and how to see clearly. So, when you have this cyclone moving through, the first step is, are you willing to choose to be completely 100% self responsible? That in itself, not easy, extremely powerful choice. Number two, in your self responsibility, 100% self responsibility, are you willing to turn and face what is moving through you? Shine a spotlight on it, look at it, face it rather than turn away. Not easy. In fact, hard, but extraordinarily self empowering. Number three, are you willing in your self responsibility and now in your willingness to look? Are you willing to lean in? To actually lean towards the experience rather than pull away, with staying conscious, without getting lost in it and without collapsing in it? Are you willing to lean in and actually feel it, be with it? And if you're able to do those first three, which it can be a lifetime's worth of work, but hell, what else are we going to be doing? Being thrown around like a ping pong ball? It's pretty worth it. If you can do those first three, which only you can do, nobody can do this for you, then I invite you to sit down In meditation, breathe, close your eyes, and visualize yourself with your awareness dropping right into the center of the whole storm. All the feelings rushing through. It helps you to even visualize it like a river of water. All the thoughts, see them like a record, like, subtitles crossing a screen, like the end titles of a movie. I'm not safe, I'm not enough, I'm blah, 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 blah. Watching the thoughts, watching the experience, and consciously inviting yourself to sit at the center of the cyclone, right in the center, and breathe. And say to yourself, I have whatever the experience that is moving through for you, and make it be right for you. I have anger moving through me. I have terror moving through me. I have shame moving through me. I have moving through me, but I am not shame. I have anger moving through me, but I am not anger. I have terror moving through me, fear moving through me, but I am not afraid. And breathe. This is a practice to commit to daily. Because if you are not getting swirled around and thrown around by your human experience, then you become powerful, extraordinarily powerful. You become conscious, fully conscious. In fact, you become the solution. You become the source of your whole experience, and you become the solution. And you realize that nothing can control you from here. It may not feel good. It may feel painful. In fact, it likely will. But my goodness, you don't lose your power. You don't lose yourself. And that's priceless. That's the greatest gift and realization of all. So it's great to be back on the podcast. I'm really glad that I was able to share this with you. I hope that you found it useful. I want to leave you with this. We are in an extraordinary time of change for humanity. Shamans, wisdom seekers, teachers were talking about this decades ago, hundreds of years ago. A time on the planet when humanity will be invited to make a shift. Yes, many things need to change. Political systems, the whole educational systems, the entire paradigm that we have been living in is coming to an end, and it needs to. But what really is being invited to shift is an internal shift. It's a shift in perception from us being human beings led by survival, led by trauma, led by reactivity, compulsion, giving our power away to authority everywhere we go, which is basically reliving a child giving everything to mum and dad, to being sovereign, powerful beings. And not because we need to become this, but because we already are this. And we have forgotten because we got lost in the cyclone of the human experience, the cyclone of the human condition. And so you need to know that you are more powerful than you can even imagine. You are the solution. Let it begin with you today. You learn how to be at the center, rooted at the center of the cyclone, And how you respond to life will transform. And you will be shocked by how powerful you can be. And nothing can control a fully conscious human being. Nothing is more powerful than a fully conscious human being. So, go forth, be powerful, be responsible, be committed, remember who you are, and you are not alone. Sending love. Thank you for listening. Bye.